So I'll say hello. Hi, Jaime Woo. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
So we know each other. I don't know how many years it's going back now, but I feel like our paths kind of keep crossing around sort of like grassroots community efforts, combined with a passion to try and make people understand a little bit and kind of see things in new ways. Would you say?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've always looked at like grassroots communities and also technology, the role of technology. I remember that you were one of the first people to try to add literary ambitions to Foursquare, which is interesting. In terms of how do we place these layers of art onto locative areas that don't necessarily seem artful. And so,
Right.
I think we've always had these interests in how technology can help us connect more rather than being the isolating things that people expect it to be.
Well, this is interesting too because I feel like a bit of like a reader ambassador in the sense that I try to create conversations and opportunities for readers to become less insular and sort of group together in like-minded ways, and that's exactly what you're doing with Gamercamp. So can you talk just a little bit about what Gamercamp is?
Yeah, so Gamercamp started, it was founded by Mark Rabo and myself because we really didn't feel like there was an outlet for people who wanted to talk about games in a way that wasn't about the functionality of games. What I mean by that is like the levels, the number of features, the what the character special moves are. Like those are attributes of games, but also I want to know why that person made that game, or what is that game, how does that speak to us? Like I just turned 30 this year, and I have a different. I'm in a different part of my life where games have to have a different meaning to it.
Mm.
I'm not interested in saving the world again and again anymore, the way that games used to do. I'm not interested in continuously killing people, unless there's some kind of art attached to it. I mean, the same way like films. Sure, lots of people are shooting each other, but
Mm.
there's a difference between a big clunky summer blockbuster or a war film or even like a spy film where yeah, it's maybe a little bit morally shady, but
Mhm.
you can see what they're trying to go for with there. Whereas
Mhm.
right now games, I don't think have those layers yet. So with Gamer Camp, we really wanted to have people come together, be able to have that kind of discourse in a way that is just starting in games, and to also include more people in it. I think that whenever people think of the word gamer, they think of a very specific um, type of person who's a gamer. And just when I say the word, everyone will have an idea in their head
Yeah.
of who the gamer is. And to me, it should include everyone.
Mhm.
I think that games have been around for thousands of years. Digital games have only been around for 40, but we've been playing games forever. So to think that games are either juvenile or for one gender or for one specific type of person is really limiting,
Right.
especially when I think we all have great memories of really fun games that we've enjoyed.
Yeah. I have memories of those big floppy disks. And back in the day of when pirating was when they were so worried about pirating, and I remember a friend of mine copying a bunch of it was probably something like a Frogger type thing,
Right.
and these floppy disks. And I think I actually, if I remember correctly, I think that we actually created sort of like a hiding place in the like sort of the TV slash game room,
Right.
because we were afraid that the FBI would show up. And this is back in the day when we didn't have things like call display, and people would still just show up at your door. And I have a really distinct memory of the doorbell ringing one night, and the first thing that I did was run for
The
the
bus
games.
here! Hide the pirated
the
Frogger!
fly, the floppy. Like, yeah, I didn't try to flush them, but okay, well, we'll talk a little bit about that because if you started Gamer Camp for this goal, did it actually surprise you when you held your first event just how like widely diverse the attendees were?
Yeah, we were heavily influenced by the ideas conferences that are out there. Looking at Idea City or TED, or the Atlantic and New Yorker festivals. So we wanted to have something that really was about the ideas behind games, and we didn't really know how interested other people would be about that. So the first year, we hoped maybe like 40 to 60 people would show up. And this was in the age when, so where the name actually comes from, Gamer Camp, is actually an ode to tech, because tech has demo camp. And it had all these other tech-centric gatherings that ended with the suffix camp.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not an actual camp. There's no tents. There's no counselors or anything like that. It's actually an ode to the fact that we kind of started as a tech meetup. But that first year, 120 people showed up, blowing away our expectations of who wanted to be there. They sat for 6 presentations just listening to people explaining their ideas. And it really showed to us that what people really want is the same thing that you get. When DVDs first came out and had director commentaries, I loved those. I really wanted to just know what was going on. I wanted to pour into everything that filmmaking was about and not just be reactive. Not just sit there for 90 minutes, engage in a film, see it, and walk away. I wanted to know how it was made. I wanted to read the screenplay. I wanted to have a clue about what was the creative process behind it. And I think we're starting to do that with Gamercamp. We're starting to give people a peek behind the curtain, and people are really interested in that.
Did you have a lot of young people?
The youngest we go is probably about 16. I think the tough thing is that because it is a big, presentation / talk.
Right.
Attention spans can be difficult. Right. But when I was 14, 15 and nerding out over film, I could certainly sit through a 90-minute talk about it. But it's just make sure that people understand expectations. It's not, it's not like a concert. It's not all hands-on stuff, though there is some hands-on stuff. Right. We do skew, 16 to 40. Okay,
so I do have sort of youth on my mind a little bit because I told you that I've entered into this relationship, and there are 2 boys, 12 and 15, and they're really into Minecraft. And Mom is I think, like a lot of adults, sort of trying to wrap her head around the appeal, and I don't know a ton about Minecraft, but my sort of argument was that I thought that there's got to be a way to sort of bridge that communication so that everybody can sort of understand the value of gaming in a person's daily life. And so I wondered if you could talk a little bit about first of all, why gaming is important to you and how it fits into your life. And then if you have any tips as to how sort of younger people and their caregivers can, begin to have a conversation about things like moderation, but also value that this brings to their life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what makes games really interesting, there's 2 aspects. One is that it's a form of play that it's one of the more socially acceptable forms of play. Even when we think of the stigmas that are associated with it, or the preconceptions of what it means to be a gamer or to play games, we really have very little forms of play in our life. And what I mean by that is the ability to just have something that doesn't have a specific functionality to it. So some of that is like just singing in the shower. No one sings in the shower because they're trying to practice to be better. Right. You do because it's a way to experiment and play with it. Yeah, maybe in your mind you are a singer and you're singing in front of a big crowd, and who cares if you're not the best singer? I think that's been something that we lose as we grow up, where there must always be a specific skill level, mastery, and functionality to what you do, otherwise you're not allowed to do it. Mm-hmm. So many people tell me, you must hear this too, I want to write, but I can't. Mm-hmm. Do you have mobility issues? Are you unable to form words? What do you mean by that? And often what they mean is that I'm not at a point where I'm a good enough writer to feel like I should self-select into this activity. Right. And that's a real shame. When we were kids, we didn't care if we didn't know how to sing. We'd join the choir. We would try to pick up sports anyways just to see what it was like. And that's how we got access to new things that we would fall in love with. Mm-hmm. We have very few forms of play as adults. We tend to have it we can choose the kind of film we want to see, or we can choose what kind of music we like, but we're not really encouraged to create much. What I love about games is that it is participatory. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm talking about board games, physical games, which are kind of adult version of outdoor games. or play our games and video games, there are ways that we can participate in it and experiment and play with the lives that we have, which is something we don't normally do. If you think about it, in a video game, if you're playing as a female character and you're male, you're playing with a character who identifies as female and you identify as male.
Right.
That's one few rare times that you get to step into someone else's gender, like into the shoes of someone else's gender, and really try to picture your life through their actions and to choose their actions. Whereas in film and books, we can definitely step in and empathize with other genders, for example, but we never get to have any choice there.
Right.
I can decide what to do. Whereas in The Sims, you could go on there and live a life as a gender that you don't identify with and find something there.
Right.
And we don't actually have to assume that just because, if I'm a male and I'm playing with a female character, that must mean I wish I was female. Well, I think that that's a little bit limited. Like I read a book about traveling to Mars. Doesn't mean I want to be a Martian, but it just means that that's something that I want to try that's different. So games are very important that way. They give us an opportunity to break out of the norm and to experiment with things. A safe space to try something different that we may not have ever before. So I am always very shy to sing in public because I don't know. I'm really bad at it. That's why. But if it's karaoke or it's rock band or it's one of those games or play spaces where you're allowed to make a fool of yourself, I'm over that. So I think that's what parents need to think about is that when you're looking at games, these are opportunities, low risk opportunities for players to take on something that they've never inhabited before and try getting better at it. It's the idea of being able to do something without that constant weight of, are you good enough? And if you're not professional enough, stop.
Yeah. I'm new. I don't really know an awful lot about a game sort of like Minecraft, but what was the game where you sort of like drive around and not like Gran Turismo?
Which one? Okay, so there's Gran Turismo, which is a racing game, and there's Grand Theft Auto, which is like a gangster game.
Okay, I think I'm thinking about Grand Theft Auto, I remember playing it when I think it was like number 3 came out. And I'd never played it before. And the guy who was showing me was saying, I believe it was the third. He was saying, like, I'm just so glad that you're actually. I said, I don't really know how to play this, and he said, no, I'm so thrilled that you're coming into the game at this point because the writers have done something really extraordinary here. And again, I don't know if it was that version, but they had gotten they had sort of figured out that fun doesn't necessarily equal winning. That failing and exploring is just as fun. And he's like basically like go off the road. And I expected, okay, well, in all the games I'd ever played, it would like bump you back on, or it would stop you, in motion and put you back on the road. And I went down and there were saloons and there were like all these things happening. And he's like, no, dude, just keep driving. And I'm like, this is blowing my mind. It's like the writers figured out that, that part of winning for some people is actually the joy of not being encumbered by having to succeed, having to reach the next level. That part of the fun of gaming is actually taking the road like completely not traveled and just seeing what's out there. My understanding with Minecraft is that it's something similar, isn't it? Is that you're building up entire worlds and then allowing other people to sort of explore them. Is that about right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Minecraft is very similar to Lego, except there's an interactive component. And I was actually, mentioning it to someone today that what makes Minecraft so brilliant is that I could show my Lego structure to just people who are physically proximal to me. And, I could send you a picture, but you wouldn't be able to explore it. Anyone in the world can explore anyone else's Minecraft architecture. And I think that is a very liberating thing, where we get to share these things that we create. And again, like that's the focus on autonomy and agency, that person's able to make something and share it with them and feel a sense of pride with it. That's what makes Minecraft so brilliant. We do like just sitting and building things or trying something, or that's why people love to cook. They're trying to bring something together. We don't always get the opportunities to do so, and I think that's what makes Minecraft so alluring, is that it is a virtual Lego set. a little bit more complex and also shareable around the world.
Mm-hmm.
To the point that you said about Grand Theft Auto, there was this gentleman who made up who kind of declared that there are four types of players, and people have kind of argued whether or not it's true or not. But he labeled them as like explorers, people who love to just explore the land and see what's out there, which is similar to what you were trying to do when you were just driving around.
Yeah.
There were like warriors who want to just kill things and level up. There's completists who want to do everything that's available, and there's social people who just love playing the game because of the social interactions on it. And that alone tells us that, we don't all play games in the same way, and advanced games will think of multiple ways for people to come in and bring their own ideas of what's fun to it. When I was teaching some kids how to game design, one of the key things I told them was, we must understand the idea of multiple funs. Just because something's not fun to you doesn't make it bad. It just means that it's not fun for you, and you may find something else fun. But other people may find it fun.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're building things, we always have to realize that not everyone likes the same things, but just because you don't like something doesn't mean it's bad.
Right.
And if adults could learn that, I think we would be so much healthier as people.
Yeah.
But just because we don't like something doesn't mean it's bad.
Right. You know what? I wanted to go back. You mentioned something about cooking, and I was thinking, if you cook, part of the joy of cooking is then you then you plate it and you give it to someone else, and you hope that they enjoy it. But they essentially they destroy it, they devour it, and it's gone, and there's no evidence anymore of what you've done. So in the world of Minecraft, like is it like interactive on that level that if I want to come into your world, I'm not just lurking around it and looking at it and saying, hey, thumbs up, Jamie. Like, I can actually impact that world. Is that right?
Yeah, I definitely know the game world can impact your world because, there are monsters at night and people can blow things up. I'm sure that based on how open the Minecraft world is, I think there must be some kind of rule set there.
Okay.
Maybe some structures are completely malleable, while I think others may be a little bit more static, where you're just looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not 100% sure about that. But I just assume that, after you work so hard on it, that you probably don't want people coming to just terrorize it.
Right. So what would you say is like the fastest rising demographic of gamers? So while gamers are really diverse, would you say that there would appear to be one demographic that is definitely...
Yeah, women.
Yeah.
Women are picking up games because finally... Actually, you know what? I'm going to change that. Games are going back to being the unisex, open to everyone thing that made me fall in love with games. If you think back to the Super Nintendo or the Nintendo, those early games, sure, Mario is a male and Sonic is a male, but they never signaled to you as strongly as the later games did that it was a purely male space.
Yeah.
I think that I remember playing with my cousins of both genders video games because they were cutesy and they were, pixel art, which was very easy to project upon. Once things started getting into photorealism and trying to get too close to reality, something switched.
Yeah.
It became very clear that this was signaled that women were not welcome in some spaces, and we saw that change in also the player type.
Well, it's like an idealized sort of version of reality, and we get screwed over the second that we try and imagine what the ideal is, right? So we give into stereotypes.
That's exactly it. There were so many stereotypes, and I think also, video game developers didn't think of themselves as artists, so they never felt that kind of responsibility to not just depend on dragon books and that kind of lore. Like, too much of it was based on Star Wars and Dungeons and Dragons and Lord of the Rings, and those are all fine references. But when everything references that, how many female characters are there in Lord of the Rings? How many female characters are there in Star Wars? Right, so we saw the trickle down effect. Right now, there's been a huge change where we're seeing games, especially from independent artists, that are welcoming to everyone, that are more inclusive, that better understand that women aren't born to not like games. It's signaled to them that this wasn't a welcome space. So that's really amazing to see. In social games, the average social game player is a woman in her 40s.
Yeah.
Women now make up, mid 40% of all gamers out there. So I think that that's really important to see, is that we have to be able to move away, be very careful to not fall into stereotypes, and to make games that are interesting for everyone.
So, what would be? Well, I want to ask you two questions. What would be some of your favorite classic all-time games that you think still hold up, and what would be some of your favorite new games?
Okay, so some of the old games that hold up. I think, if you go back to the classics, if you go, Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo holds up because it's a good example of how platforming games should be developed. Zelda is a perfect example of an action adventure game. I think that holds up really, really well. Puzzle games always hold up really, really well. Let's see, what else do I really... I actually love... I mean, if anyone can get their hands on games for the Sega Dreamcast, they, to me, were a dizzying high point for games. So there was this game called Space Channel 5, where you play a reporter in outer space who, to prevent alien attacks, has to do a dance routine, and her dancing is so alluring that all the aliens starts dancing with her, and that's how they get changed back to saving the world. I don't know, it's very Japanese, it's so bizarre, but it's really, really quirky and fun, and I love that about it. There was a game called Seaman, and I say that very slowly, and for the Dreamcast as well, and it contained a little microphone, and it was this fish. It was kind of like during the Tamagotchi age. It was a fish with a Japanese man's face in the front instead of a real head, and you could talk to it and teach it words, and as it grew, you could have conversations with it, and by the end of it, it would talk to you like it was a real person. It was very, very surreal to have this virtual fish face friend who you could speak and talk to. Those games, to me, were very experimental, and they were trying to push the medium in a certain direction. And so, a lot of the Sega games on the Dreamcast are brilliant for the way that they really incorporate play. As for what I really love right now, I think that a lot of the independent games that I'm seeing coming out are what's most interesting to me. I love good, like Left 4 Dead 2 is like a fun zombie shooter where you go around, you're a zombie surviving, you're shooting the crap out of zombies. I like that stuff, but I think that that is indicative of where games have been. Whereas I'm really looking forward to now. Yeah, as a festival programmer, I'm always looking for where games are going. I love Dance Central. I think that Dance Central is a brilliant game. Do you know Dance Central?
No.
Okay, so it's from the same people who made Rock Band, and it uses the Kinect, which is a motion sensor, like hands-free motion sensor. You see a character on screen dancing, and you literally have to follow the moves along to the beat. So you can become a better dancer just from playing this game.
Right.
And amazing workout, and it reminds people, I think, of how just thrilling dancing actually is.
Yeah.
You know that in Toronto, we're not huge dance people. Like, we either flail around or we, stand by the wall with our arms, to our chest.
Yeah.
Actual dancing. They have a hip-hop choreographer that worked with them. I think that's really interesting, because then people can just practice dancing in their home and have a good time. I love that. There's so many games on the iPod that I'm so fascinated with right now. There's a puzzle game called Osmos, where you're this moat, you're like this little sphere, and you have to go and swallow smaller moats, and you have to do it quick enough before other bigger moats swallow you. And it goes with real physics engines, and it kind of reminds me of biology, but it also works as a metaphor for consumerism. It works on so many different levels. It was Apple's iPad Game of the Year a couple of years ago. I love it. I feel like I'm going to try to limit this list, because I really can go on forever. Actually, let me show you a game right now that I'm playing. And that's what the music is in the background. It's from a Toronto game maker. Oops. This is going to be... Okay, here we go. Let me make sure that you can see that. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just move up a little bit closer. Oh, damn it. Okay. Can you see the screen, or is it too bright?
Yeah, no, that's good. It says Sound Shapes?
Yeah, this is Sound Shapes. And this is the game. Cool, because it is... So let me show you it.
Ooh.
So how this works, there was a collaboration musicians and game makers. And John Mackey is the creative director behind this. Really thinks about how level design and sound work together.
Okay.
So everything in the world, if you can hear that, makes a noise. And when you collect notes, it starts creating the music in the level.
Ooh.
The game is actually a musical instrument while being a game.
So does my voice register?
Well, it's not your sound that's making it. It's what's already been programmed in here.
Okay.
So you see this little blue thing that I'm about to go
Yeah.
get?
Yeah.
Adds a new note to the song that's playing in the background. These things make little noises that contribute to the song.
Oh,
And
that's very cool.
So you can hear that now the music is really starting to build up and become a cohesive song. And I built it by playing this level.
Yep.
So I love the art style of this. I love the way that it understands how music works. And that's why I wanted to show it to you, because I think that the 12, the boys are going to love, the 12 and 15-year-old boys are going to love this game because it includes game design elements with it while also being very playable.
Right.
And the only thing I can do is I got to make sure not to touch anything red, because if I do, I die.
Oh.
I'm so see there.
Oh wow, that's what death looks like. Okay.
It's not traumatic at all. And as I finish there, so now the song is fading because it's ending. So I'm actually playing the song while also playing the level. So
right.
It's kind of that way. And artists like Beck and Deadmau5 have contributed music.
Oh, sweet.
So it is. I think we're going to see lots of people start playing around with this. And then what I want to show on top of that, let's skip that, is you can also make your own levels. And this is, I don't know if they have a PlayStation 3, because it's out for PlayStation 3.
Mm.
What's really cool is I can actually build a level myself and then share it with the world, kind of like how people do with Little Big Planet and how people do with Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who's interested in making games would find this game interesting because you have to understand how game design works.
Okay.
But you don't know any programming.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. So I'm going to add some music here. So all I do is the notes, depending on where I put it. I'm not a very good musician, so this is not going to be a very good song.
Okay.
And then I would also be able to add some obstacles in here as well. And then when I'm ready, I can actually play the level that I created, so I can see how it works. And so this is basically, anyone who loves Mario or who loves those platforming games would be able to hone their skills at making a game like that using sound shapes.
Wow.
And about music, they could also build their songs and then build the level based on it. Okay, so that's enough of that.
Wow. Okay, so let me ask about moderation, because like I'm a creature of habit, and if I get into something, I'll just go and go and go. So how do you, like, I mean, you're clearly passionate about games, you love them. It's also, I mean, it's like it's part of your vocation and your work life. So how do you carve out meaningful time that's like away from games?
Well,
I mean, you're quite social, so I mean, I guess it's pretty easy, but
I mean, I think the big difference is like, I'm the type of person who actually likes to do things in very concentrated periods.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, like I bought all of Roseanne, the TV show, on DVD, and I watched like a whole season over a weekend. Like I'll tell people I'm busy, but really I'm just at home watching Roseanne. So for me, moderation is something that I have to think about, because I'm not very good actually with doing things. I get very bored. If you tell me to do something for just 1 hour a day repeatedly, I hate that. Like, I'm very much like, let me finish this within a week's time and move on. Mm-hmm. I think the key here is to be able to, I mean, we all spend our time doing things that we hopefully like or love anyways. I think the big key difference is like, what's the difference between, or how put yourself to have an active role in what you love.
Mm.
You never say to people, hey, you should stop training for that marathon so much. You're just upset. Why are you so addicted with that? You're singing all the time for this concert that you're practicing for. Stop that. You're so addicted. We don't need to do it with that because we feel that it's productive. Whereas the main idea here is that we feel like games are non-productive.
Right.
Well, don't be addicted. It's non-productive.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, like, I play games and now games are my vocation. But clearly, games were productive for me. Not everyone's going to be a games festival programmer, but I think that what's key there is to be able to include some active elements. So, like, what I love about Sound Shapes is making your own level.
Mm-hmm.
Minecraft is brilliant because you're making something. We wouldn't tell someone, well, maybe not, but like with Lego, we kind of allow them to play with Lego as long as they want because it's considered productive.
Mm-hmm.
When you write a lot, people don't tend to go, oh, you might get addicted to writing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do too much. Again, because it's very productive. So it's making that, I think the closest case would maybe how we tell people not to be a zombie on the television.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing it because you love it, or are you doing it to pass time? I think that's the key question. And I think that's the valuable thing for kids to learn, you know, or anyone to learn. It's like, why are we doing things? Is it because we love it, or are we just...
Right.
My kids, you know, I used to play a lot of bad video games just because I was passing the time. I had no real alternative. But I question if it's because I didn't have the autonomy. Someone didn't say to me, hey, instead of playing that game, why don't we build a board game together? Why don't we try to make a physical game together? Let's make something. I think that's what's really important nowadays, is that we get people to not just consume, but to be active makers as well. That's how we get great writers, because they read a lot and they also write a lot.
Right.
That of game players as well. Play a lot of games, but think about making it, or think about changing it. Make rules up, or write a games magazine because you love it so much, or maybe you want to find some way where you can find a way to be culture itself. I'm trying not to make the equivalence that the way to pure game addiction is to make it functional and practical. Like, that's what I'm say. But I think that we need to negotiate the way that we interact with it a little bit more knowledgeably.
Right.
It's the same way that you for Apple web pages. Like, I've done that before, right? You just get trapped in looking after like website after website, and you're like set in reading about what Hillary Duff ate last week, and you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
What am I doing? The web's also where you can find out amazing stuff about research or what people are doing, or connect with your friends and see their pictures and stuff like that. We got to use the tools in the right way.
Okay, well, I'm gonna stop you there because I want to make a second part of this interview, which is precisely, this is the perfect segue, precisely the fact that you are in the process of writing a book about something that you're working on.
Before we segue, should I show you some books that might be good for people who want to
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, this is one that's out right now. It's called Rise of the Video Game Zinesters: How Freaks, Normals, Amateurs, Artists, Streamers, Dropouts, Queers, Housewives, and people who are taking an art form back.
Nice. And who's that written by?
Anna right down there.
Okay.
Anna is a trans games developer, independent. She lays out some really interesting ideas in here. Anna, as an independent game developer, isn't such a big fan of AAA companies. I think that's the one thing that I kind of disagree with her on. I think there's a role for different kinds of companies in the industry. But what I find really helpful about this book is that she lays out why games are important, and also the tools that one might use to create games.
Okay.
So literally chapters of the different programs you can use to create games. So I think, I don't necessarily know if some of the material in here is audience appropriate for everyone, but skim through would at least provide the idea of some of the tools that are in here.
Cool.
You can use it as you wish. The other one I want to present was this one. It's called Challenges for Game Designers. So if game design hobby or desire goes farther, there are activities in here that good game designers will think about. In the same way, like as writers, we have writing exercises, right? Like write the first line to your favorite, rewrite the first line to your favorite short story, or recreate the ending for this novel based on what you saw. It's the same thing that this book does. It gives you tons and tons of challenges to work through, and I encourage young people to try to make games as soon as possible because everyone's first game is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So terrible game out of the way, and if you are 13 or 14 or 15 or 16, by the time that you're 25, it'll mean that you've had a decade of game making experience. And I want to play those games. I'm so excited to see people create games who've been creating them all their lives, the same way that we teach people to sing or dance or run, laps around a track early on. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Okay, so we'll end here, and then we'll go to part 2 to talk about your exciting new project.